Okay, so our game Inferno is essentially a choice-based game. We want to highlight that every option has real in-game consequences. So whenever the fallout is good or bad, it can be interpreted differently by the player themselves. So no option within our game is obviously better or worse than the others. The player is essentially going through hell and enduring punishment until the end. Um, Overall, our game is a role-playing game, and that's important when addressing the type of players that we target. Individuals who want to win the game or enjoy competitiveness are not the main audience for our game. The target audience is players that enjoy a story, even if the characters are unsuccessful. The players or the target audience themselves will want to play the game for the emotional impact. Finally, we've included a few chances for the players to break the rules within the game. These decisions will have no real consequence or impact on the storyline, but instead provide some comic relief. So players would be certain to discover these on future replays.
So the first circle of hell that we look into is lust. The second is gluttony, and the third is greed. So lust is defined as a very strong sexual desire. Having the desire for sex is not a sin, though, but when the sexual desire is out of the context of marriage, it becomes a sin. Lust allows for the breaking of God's commandments, such as adultery, due to falling for one's carnal desires. Gluttony is defined as, in a narrow sense, the equivalent of wasting food. Broadly speaking, it refers to an addiction of some sort, whether it's alcoholism, drug abuse, accumulating unnecessary items, or indulging in gambling and having fun without enterprise. Greed is defined as an extreme or excessive desire for resources such as money or other symbols of wealth. Excessive is defined as possessing something to such a degree that it becomes harmful. So one example of a scenario that we are doing for lust is we know that politicians tend to fall for their carnal desire, and we've seen many famous examples such as Bill Clinton, John Edwards, and Jim McGreevey. Our scenario that we planned for lust is the politician is looking to hire an assistant. After rounds of interviews, he cuts it down to two final candidates, a young, attractive female assistant and an older, mature female assistant. Although the older assistant is much more experienced, he's attracted to the younger assistant. So the scenario that he's presented is should he hire the more qualified and deserving candidate or fall for his lust and attraction to hire the younger assistant that he plans to pursue?
The next level is anger, and I'll cover that in a second. After that, it's heresy. Heresy is the belief or opinion contrary to Orthodox religious, especially Christian doctrine. So when our politician was alive, their policies catered to religious folks. However, our character did not follow the devout, pious life they claimed to have lived when they were alive. So God's will dictated that our player dies when the time comes. However, the devil gives our player an ultimatum: go against God's will and be resurrected for one day to right the wrongs of their life. If they choose to be resurrected, they must use the time to correct their wrongs. If they choose to be resurrected, they will lose their entire lifetime of memories, but they will be looked at as a better Christian to their constituents and their loved ones. So an example of one of our levels would be anger. Anger is closely related to intimidation and dominance, which is a common theme in our game and territory that is very familiar to politicians, particularly our character. On the other side of the spectrum, there are whistleblowers and people who expose these politicians for who they truly are. One such whistleblower appears in our story as they attempt to expose our characters' backdoor dealings surrounding their lackluster environmental policy. Our character figures that the best way to stop it is by bullying the whistleblower into silence. As an ultimatum, our character has to either give the whistleblower money for medical and other expenses as hush money, or the character could step down from their position and their political career. Now, most of our levels come with a similar ultimatum: either act uncharacteristically and do what is morally right by owning up to their sinful behavior in their life, or they can act as they normally would, selfish and uncaring of how they got ahead in their career, just as long as they do. Done.
Next level is violence. Being violent typically means that one has the intent to hurt, damage, kill, or permanently maim someone. The level of violence has 3 parts to it on its own. The ring you choose to go through will depend on the type of player you are or choose to be. The outer ring, the middle ring, and the inner ring. If you choose the outer ring, you are a sinner who was physically harmful to others and things around you. If you chose the middle ring, you have committed suicide in your life, and if you chose the inner ring, you have disgraced religion as a whole. The next level is fraud. Fraud. The idea of fraud is a level based around fraud on its own. Fraud is defined as wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. At the beginning of the game, you are promised to regain your life as it was before. However, no matter what the player does, they cannot return to complete normalcy. Their life will be different no matter if they return or not. The next level is treachery. Treachery is a betrayal of trust, deceptive action, or nature. It represents an idea or challenge to the player in which the player is placed up against a homogeneous society or collective that they must accept to become a part of or reject it entirely. The idea and challenge of this level is to introduce a subtle threat to individuality, but rejecting it will make the player an enemy to society. Choosing to become one with society places the player into a selfish limbo. It may achieve their desire to be accepted, but betraying society enables their individuality while causing them to be the enemy of social standard, ultimately condemned to eternal suffering and failure. All in all, each level of Inferno represents your journey through hell, but really these are all challenges we have to deal with in life, whether it be directly or indirectly. It's all bound to happen.